Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the second episode of Focus Features. Today we are going to talk about enclosures. The reason for that is because enclosures are a vital part of a zoo game, obviously, but there has been a lot of confusion going on about the enclosures lately, and we're going to talk about this in a second. But first of all, as in the last video, we are first of all going to talk about the facts, the actual stuff we do know already. So let's go into this bit over here. And so we start with a statement that Bo did release lately, and as you can see in this statement over here, we have actually the statement. I'm just going to quickly read that out because this basically is something very important for this episode. So Bo said some very good and correct assumptions in this thread. We are going to talk about the assumptions later, by the way. To clarify, you definitely need fencing, which comes in different styles and sizes around your habitat for the game to register that habitat as completed. As there are some management and animal functions, such as whether the size of the habitat is right and the amount of animals that you as a player need to be mindful of. However, you can choose to hide the fencing in terrain, as you can see in the already posted screenshot, or you can use the in-game null fence option, which means your fence is technically finished but won't be visible to you, just during the editing building mode. Love, Bo. So, as you can see, I included that image over here, which is also put into the forum thread. And as you can see down here, I'm just going to highlight this one in case you can't see that. There is a fence in this wonderful terrain hidden in there. And what actually triggered me is, and I was looking into when we were actually able to see that, and it basically happens when you did click on the pathing option in the game. So as soon as you open the pathing, the invisible or actually the hidden terrain is also shown. I don't know why exactly this is the case. I looked into the gameplay again, and there was basically no single situation where they clicked on the fencing option. So then I would have shown this to you, but there was no click on that one, so we can't really look into this. However, it's shown that we can hide it in terrain over here. Basically, it is also kind of confirmed already that there is also the hidden fence in a lot of cases already existing, and this is why I'm going to enable this one again. And let me just highlight, this is the elephant enclosure. We also have another one we are going to look in later on. I have this also included in these images. You know what, I'll just quickly drag that up because I think this will help us to understand even better. Oh wow, this is actually the exact same screenshot. Did I forget to put in the other one? I did so. Well, it doesn't really matter that much, because the one thing we are going to talk about is this area down here. So there we go. This is also part of the elephant enclosure, and there is definitely no fence whatsoever. You can see that. Let me just quickly make the thing a little bit smaller so you can actually see. There we go. This is where the path is. I'm just going to quickly zoom in so we can have an even better look at it. Oops, I should press the button to move over. There we go. So what's going on here? My pen is very old, so you can definitely tell that there is basically only terrain, and this is the enclosure, so there's no fence whatsoever. It might be hidden in the terrain down here, but it could also very easily be just the null fence. So why I'm actually pointing at this image, there's a very special reason for that, because I'm going to talk a little bit more about enclosure design in general in this video. First of all, which is very important to note, is that we do have, and therefore I'm just going to make this even smaller, we have this fine line of fence going down here, and it just goes down here below that area into the terrain. So if we would follow that line, we can pretty much say that the fence actually works pretty much like that, right? So here we go. This is how it works. And now, the very interesting bit about this is, because this is the wolf enclosure, you can actually see those wolves down here as well. This is basically then connected by maybe this fence. As you can see over here, it looks like a little bit like a wall. It's not really like a fence. It could just very well be just another fence option. But now the thing that really interests me is the pathing. So let me just quickly change the color of our pen here a little bit to a, let's make it like a brighter color, like so. So the path really goes through that enclosure just over the area. So what I'm wondering is if, and this is going to be very important in the later stage of that video, if we would be able to just build that kind of path into the enclosure so that it touches the ground. And I would actually wonder if the animals then could easily work their way around here and just get out of this enclosure. So given the fact this would touch the ground here, the animals could easily just go here and just go out of the enclosure. So that'll be super interesting to know, because this will also be a very interesting design choice that you have to make in the making of your enclosure. So yeah, we just basically jumped into this discussion over here because I just thought it would be fitting pretty nicely. If we then go into our layers again and just deactivate that one and that one as well, back into this image, there are a few more reasons why we definitely need the support of fencing. So as Bo said in her statement, the fences are needed that the game registers the enclosure for being an enclosure, right? So this is the main reason it needs to be an enclosure in the first place, so that it knows how big it is. And the reason for that is also can be easily displayed on the right hand side here. We have a need of animals, and I mean, just before we talk about that, oops, that was a little bit too far, just need to go back into the image. There we go. So one thing to note is that I first of all need to move over. So wow, I don't even know why this happens all the time. So this is, you know, it's from Malati. I don't even remember. I think it was a saltwater crocodile where this image comes from. But you can see that there's like navigable terrain. And I'm pretty sure, I don't really know what these things are telling us. I believe this is the size, like is the size of the enclosure correct? So it seems to be completely fulfilled, so we can put a check mark in. And in terms of water, it seems that there's just a little bit missing, and there's one more thing that we need to research about this enclosure. But it's good to know that this is basically already a quick hint on what we have. And then we can see how much of the different soil and ground textures they need. So you can see that the need of grass is definitely grass long and grass short, which is interesting, is definitely fulfilled. So you can see this is the marker over here, and over here. So the soil seems to be pretty okay as well. The rock seems to be okay, and the sand seems to be okay. The only thing I didn't really understand by now is what this empty bit at the beginning is. Like, why isn't that filled? Or do we just need to make sure that there's like you know, I couldn't really imagine how to move that and what it would change. But to recognize how much terrain you have, you basically need to tell the game what exactly is the enclosure, you know, because if you don't set a certain area, then the game can't notice what the enclosure is, and so you wouldn't be able to tell if there is enough grass or whatever. So just given the fact, and this is just very easily, let's just do a little quick new layer here and just fill it white, so we can work this on. Okay, so now wait, I'm not in this layer, right? Well, I am in this layer. Why am I not able to paint something? Wait, because I'm painting white. Never mind. So here we go. Yeah, now I can paint. So just imagine you got an enclosure. Well, let's say that is your enclosure, right? And then you would have like the path goes something like that. You know, that's where the guests walk around. And then if you didn't just decide to kind of put water in here, right? So the game really doesn't know about this area down here. Let me just change the color again so you can see that in a better way. So the game really can't tell what this area is over here. They don't know if it's a border. They don't know if they have to calculate this area as well for the terrain. So you need to tell the game that there is a border. So the option we will then have, as the statement of Bo says, is that we're pretty much going to fulfill this entire thing. We're just drawing a fence down here, which then is invisible, and then you can easily put the water as a natural boundary in here. This is pretty much like how it will work in the game. So I also brought you some examples of that, and so here we go. Preparation is everything. I'm so proud of me that I finally did prepare something. But before we do so, let me just jump one step back, because I want to talk about one last thing, and this is the gate option down here. Did I really not click on that again? Yeah, I did. Okay, so here we go. So this is the gate. You can see there is a gate in here, and I'm just going to highlight that a little bit better for you guys and zoom in a little bit more. So this is the ride that goes into, and you have this gate, so it's incorporated into the actual the actual enclosure fencing, which is nice to know because that means we can get guests in and get guests out with various types of rides. However, I'm pretty sure that this only works obviously with a moving ride, so you won't be able to just get in with the pathway. And the reason why I'm always talking about getting guests into enclosures is basically, and this is now why we go back into that one image I just opened a few seconds ago a little bit too quickly. That's what she said, but anyways, so here we go. This is the picture I brought you to talk about. So there are various types of enclosures, and before we are actually going to talk about exactly these enclosures we have in these images, let me just quickly show you a few examples of what I was talking about. So we just create another layer here and we put again in white, so we can just draw that out quickly. I'm just going to make this full white so it's easier to distinguish for you guys. So there is basically type number 1 or type A. This is the very easy example of a fully fenced enclosure, and then you are basically going to put in some dedicated viewing areas, whatever they might be here, so your guests can see it pretty much like straightforward, like in Jurassic World Evolution. You're basically covering this. That's a pretty straightforward enclosure, right? So nothing really major to talk about. Then we have type number B. Type number B is an enclosure which is partly fenced. So you basically could have something like that, which is like a half-ish island. And this down here is all water, right? And you have animals that don't swim. So this basically over here is the fence, that is the fence, and this is no fence whatsoever. So this area down here is actually just the normal coastline, and so this would be the enclosure type number B. So this is how that would work, right? And then we obviously have one more enclosure. We can, whoops, where's the eraser? Wait, no, what is that? I need the, oh, I put R. Why? Okay, yeah, well, never mind. I just need to paint that because reasons. So here we go. Just paint over. Why is that not even? I just don't like that. So here we go. Great. So the next example would be the enclosure where you have like basically a path that moves straight through that one, and this could be of a ride or whatever, and then you would have the enclosure somewhat like that, and you would have the gates, right? So this would be an example of the cheetah enclosure we've seen in the gameplay. So that would be type C actually. So we have these 3 types already, but then there is a last one which I want to talk about, and this is basically an indoor enclosure. So if we have like an indoor situation, something like that, and then indoor you would have like a, I don't know, like a pathway that is meandering through the indoor area. So this is going to be complicated for the game to process then, because obviously all of this is the enclosure, and you usually have animals like birds or, I don't know, small creatures that can't really, you know, move onto the pathway, or they barely even do because they recognize that it's not too clever to do so. But you have some birds, some climbing animals and stuff like that, maybe sometimes even monkeys. So what you then could do is you could basically do a little trick of, and this is what I meant. So if we see this entrance over here from the side, so just imagine this would be the entrance to the indoor park, right? So this is like kind of the door over here. So then we have the pathway going like so, going indoors, and that's like it. And then we have obviously enclosure over here and enclosure over here. So the game, if you would be to put the fence down here, the game kind of can't put that door in here. It's just not working, right? So the door would be a problem because people then couldn't connect to this path down here. It's just not working because the fence just doesn't recognize a door for people moving onto the pathway. This is actually the reason why I asked if it would be like, there are 2 possibilities to work around that. So the first one would be to basically create something like that. So if there is no door in here, I need to have this bigger, it's just annoying. Well, it doesn't really change too much, but if we would be here to just change it like so, and then it doesn't look black and white again. So this is like the full door. If you would then put the pathway somewhat like that. Oh wait, this is way too thick. Just bring that back to 9. Awesome. So what you could do obviously is to try to get in with an incline of this path, so that it just come down from over here. And just to make sure what I meant, I'm just going to clean the mess up in here a little bit better so you understand what I meant. So yeah, well, I can just do it like so, and then, you know, there is somewhat like, you know, this would be then just continue over here, and then you would have like a pathway going in here, and the fence still recognizes the enclosure. But way more easy would be to basically just change the fence, and I'm just taking a different color here to show you. So what you can then easily do is just make the invisible fence go down here, just below the ground slightly, and just go up again, right? So the game still recognizes that there is a fence happening, and you can basically just build the pathway right over it. I don't know if you need to trick something down here with a little bit of terrain work or whatever, but just it would be just this very early area of the indoor park, and that will be it. So the only question I still have, if the path down here, if we just mark this area down here, like the ground path in an enclosure is actually working, so it will be that area inside of an enclosure. And I don't even know how guests would react if they would be actually within an enclosure and have the animals like roaming around. But this could be a cool idea how you can make those enclosures work. And if we go back to the little layer we had here, we can actually talk about that. So the little situation I showed you was basically what you can see. Yeah, just move that down. What you can see here. So wait, why am I not able to draw on that one? I am just on that. Hello? All right, I need to quickly just do this. Oh, nah, never mind. Boom, here we go. Now I'll be able to draw on that one. Obviously I forgot. So yeah, the situation is basically as you can see down here. So there's a path just meandering through here, and that's kind of an indoor one. You can see animals could move like basically everywhere. So yeah, it would be pretty cool to have an option like that, because yeah, it just makes the whole thing so much more easy. This obviously is the idea I had with the natural environment, and there's actually, I found a nice image. Let me just zoom in, because I found this. I couldn't unfortunately find a better resolution of that one, but this is from, I couldn't really find which zoo it was, but it definitely explains how they work with these natural boundaries over here. You can see this might be a tiger enclosure, I guess, and this is like the water area where they don't swim, and if they do swim, they can't get out of here because it's too steep to actually climb out of. And then they have actually something which is like an overhanging border, a little bit like so that they can't even hold on to it and climb up, because tigers do apparently swim. But yeah, this is how they work around with that. And to be fair, it actually is like a fence down here. It just appears as it would be a normal, obviously, like a non-existent border, but it is definitely existent. So I think it's a pretty good way to just have the null fence option, which, as you might have seen, it's also pretty easy to stick that into terrain. And then we do have these indoor enclosures like so. And if you don't want to go for these preset indoor ones and you want to stick like a bigger animal in an indoor enclosure, you can basically walk it out like this down here. I think this is an easy example of how you could just put a roof on your enclosure and it would be inside. Like it doesn't really make a big of a difference. I don't know if animals would recognize that they're like all the time in a shelter, if you will. So because this will be the case if like there's a whole roof about their enclosure, that they feel like in being in an entire enclosure or whatever, which is having a roof, and they need some fresh air. I don't really know if the game does recognize it, but apparently you can just make those enclosures. And I'm not going to talk about the small exhibits because they're basically just a box of glass, and we will talk about that on a later stage. But since I have not too much info on that one and I don't want to go too much into guessing, I'm just leaving that out for the moment, because I still have no clue how they exactly will work, and so I'm just focusing on what you can do with the normal fencing barrier tool. So before we end this episode, let's talk about the last screenshot, just just talking through one more specific example I found, which is a little bit different from what we have talked about, but just very, 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 very tiny difference in there. So if we move over, oops, where we go, over here, I know it's not the best resolution, and I definitely need to go into this image to be able to paint on that one. So what you can see here is, and this is a fairly small enclosure. If I would take a bet, this is the Lemoore enclosure from the screenshot we have seen about the Lemoore. Why I'm pointing at this specific enclosure is it has a fairly small footprint, and it will be, actually this image guarantees that, or actually it is the foundation for me to talk about, oops, I need to zoom out, about this situation down here. Let me just zoom in again. So we have this one. So in terms of footprint, you know, this, oops, yeah, well, that was clever, Rudi. This footprint down here, you know, if you would just take this area, this footprint basically mimics exactly this area. Like, this is definitely pretty much a similar size. It's not the exact same size, but it's definitely a similar size. And it really opens the possibilities to me that we will be able to make these kind of small exhibits, even though they are not the small exhibits of the game definition, if you will. By the way, this boulder looks ace over here. Anyways, that's not the topic of this video. I'm just distracted by boulders anyways. So yeah, pretty cool to see that this enclosure also works with two different types of fencing. I'm quite sure this is just normal fencing, but yeah, it's super cool. It doesn't really have any specific viewing point. It's just that this one, I think it's chain link fence or whatever, is just pretty much transparent, so people can see what's going on in there. The only thing is I'm still wondering where the animals can rest and where there would be like a shed or something to hide in here, but that should be not my job to judge it right now. But the only thing I would take this screenshot is just to get a foundation on for what I've just shown you, oops, again, down here. So yeah, I think this is fairly possible, and yeah, I think I want to end this video over here with the overview of different types of enclosures. So just as a little summary, if you didn't watch the entire video, we were talking about different types of enclosures. So the first enclosure being the very normal enclosure, as you know it, completely fenced off on both sides, actually on all four sides if you will, but there's just fence going on and some dedicated viewing areas. That's pretty easy. You can't see that in this image. It's just a very standard-ish environment. So the second one is basically having a natural border. This is kind of these two images to the top left and top right, not to a certain extent. It's also this image over here. The natural border is kind of just, you know, fake natural border, because apparently these animals can swim, but what you could do is like hide the fencing in the ground, in the water, so the animals can't climb out of the water on the one side. So it appears as if there would be only the water as a border, but actually there's a fencing going on. And with the Planet Zoo null fence option, which is basically an invisible fence, you will be pretty easily able to do that. If we continue to the left down side, down here, this is basically grounding in the fact that we will be able to basically build everything with piece by piece toolbox, so you can basically stick every roof, every piece everywhere you want. So you can easily create like a fake indoor enclosure if you want, by just using the fence options in the game and then just put it all within a building. You know, there you go, there you have it. And one of the more complicated things to work around is like, how the hell do we get pathing within an enclosure so that animals can interact with the path? And I showed you some of the options that we might be able to do. So like, for example, hide the fence below this pathway so that people are actually walking into the enclosure, and then the only thing we still have to kind of deal with is if the animals can still use the pathway to escape, or if they will be even walking onto the pathway, because yeah, maybe they have a system that animals don't go onto the path once it's in the enclosure, but I'm not sure about that. This would be guessing, but there will be some ways of kind of faking an indoor enclosure like that. So if, you know, if there will be no option that we talked about, you still have the option to basically just fake it by just putting all the invisible fences around and then just always put the same animal in, so it appears that the same animal is in all these, but in fact you have multiple enclosures in there, so that could be working as well anyways. So yeah, but that's just a sandbox thing. And yeah, that's about it. I think we really made a deep dive here into enclosures, how they will be functioning, how different they are. And I know, before you guys go down in the comments and just talk about how many more options there are, this is only grounding on all the info we have right now. So apparently we also would need to talk about underwater enclosures and water enclosures and stuff like that. But we have no clue about how this will work and how much the animals will interact with water, if they go diving, if they don't do. There are so many variables that we can't answer right now, so I'm just wanting to leave them out over here. Anyways, please let me know in the comments down below now how you liked the video. What is your thoughts, or what are your thoughts about the enclosures, and what do you think is best to handle this, and which is your favorite type of enclosure? If you have one, just let me know down below. But for now, that should be it. Episode number 2 is done, so see you in the 3rd episode of the feature focus. But for now, that's it. See you next time and have a good day. Bye guys. So thank you for watching this video. I hope you appreciate that. And now a special thanks also to all the people supporting me here on that channel, making this all possible. You can see that on the left hand side right now. And also, if you want to see more of my stuff, make sure to click that card on the right top now. And if you want to stick around, make sure to hit that sub button, which is on the bottom right of the screen. If you want to see stuff on my social media, sneak peeks and stuff like that, it is on the bottom left on the screen. And yeah, I hope to see you again in the next episode. Until then, enjoy your time guys, and bye!